Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are submerging deep into a world that is heavy, relentlessly hot, and fundamentally silent. We're embarking on a pretty ambitious exploration of a classic American work that's centered entirely around isolation, economic struggle, and, well, the profound human tendency to project.
Right.
Our setting is the Deep South, where every intense inner life is just struggling and often failing to find any kind of authentic outer voice.
That's the perfect frame for it. Our mission today is really to take our source material, this incredibly dense, psychologically rich narrative, and truly unpack the fierce inner worlds of five central characters.
That's really 4+1, isn't it?
Exactly. We have four intensely verbal, chaotic, and driven individuals, and then there's this one quiet, immovable figure, the mute man who becomes the unwitting spiritual receptacle for all their longing, their hopes, and their political fervor.
It's not just a story about a place. It's a study in this kind of endemic loneliness hidden just below the surface of what seems like a busy, populated American town.
Absolutely.
So let's start with the setting, because you can't really talk about this story without it. The geography and economy of this town are so linked to the emotional state of everyone in it.
Oh, completely. You're planted squarely in the heart of the Deep South. And the sources describe these incredibly long, burning, hot summers. It imposes the sort of sluggish, suffocating weight on everything.
And the winters are brief, they're changeable, there's not really any respite.
No, not at all. And that climate, it just mirrors the economic reality. It's a large town. You have your 2- and 3-story shops on the main streets. But the biggest, most flourishing buildings, those are the cotton mills and the factories.
They're the engines of the whole place.
They are. They employ the vast majority of the population. And this industrial setup, which was so typical of the era, it means the town is just overwhelmingly working class and, well, as a result, profoundly poor.
And that poverty isn't abstract. It's something you can see and feel. The source material captures this so perfectly, describing the pervasive, desperate look of hunger and of loneliness that you see in the faces of people on the streets.
Yeah.
You can just feel the weight of that constant grinding struggle. It's a baseline anxiety that just never, ever lifts.
And that anxiety creates the emotional background music for the entire narrative. But into this desperate, anxious setting, we're immediately introduced to two figures who, for a decade, seemed to be totally immune to this loneliness.
The two mutes, Spiros Antonopoulos and John Singer.
That's them.
Their shared life was one of apparent contentment. It was this quiet, self-contained little universe. They lived together for a solid decade, and the sources make it really clear that their bond was the single most stable, defining element in Singer's life.
And they are such fascinating foils, even within their shared silence. I mean, physically, intellectually. Antonopoulos is the obese and dreamy Greek candy maker.
Right.
He's often sloppily dressed. His polo shirt is stuffed in at the front, but hanging loose behind. His face is described as round and oily, usually with this gentle, almost stupid-looking smile. He's simple, sensory, just content in his immediate physical world.
And then you have John Singer, the total opposite. Tall, thin, immaculate. He's always soberly dressed, and he has this quick, intelligent, almost restless expression in his eyes.
And his profession. He's a silverware engraver.
Which requires precision and silence. It's perfect.
It is. And their bond was marked by this daily ritual. Every single morning before Singer crossed the street to the jewelry store, he would pause, put his hand on Antonopoulos' arm, and just look deeply into his friend's face.
And when they were home, he would talk eagerly with his hands to Antonopoulos, sharing everything that was on his mind.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a really crucial technical detail about Singer that we have to unpack. His silence isn't a limitation. It's actually a highly skilled mode of communication.
Right. He had been deaf since he was an infant, but he was proficient in both American, the one-hand sign language, and European, which is the two-hand system. And he could read lips and speech.
That proficiency is so key to understanding his isolation, isn't it?
Oh, it's everything. His linguistic skills suggest this intellectual reach that just far exceeds the parochial nature of the town and his simple life.
The fact that he uses both major forms of sign language.
Yes. The one-handed American and the two-handed European. It implies this almost global scholarly interest in communication. It contrasts so sharply with the loud regional chaos that's all around him.
So his silence feels more like a choice, or at least a natural state, not some kind of inability.
Exactly. Which is why the catalyst for the whole story is so heartbreaking. This decade of quiet companionship just breaks entirely when Antonopoulos, because of his erratic behavior and, his simplified mental state, is committed to an asylum.
And with Antonopoulos gone, Singer is just. He's utterly dislocated. The entire structure of his life just collapses.
And that's the fundamental shift. Singer is no longer communicating with an equal. He's left with this profound emotional vacuum. And this vacuum, it transforms him into the silent void, perfectly available to be filled by the intense verbal projections of everyone else in town who desperately needs to be heard.
He's to be validated.
Yes.
So the separation is immediate, and it's just devastating for Singer. We get these agonizing details about his visits to Antonopoulos at the asylum. And they're less about reconnecting and more about just documenting the total breakdown of his world.
The trips are long, they're deeply sad. And the contrast between Singer's memory of his friend and what Antonopoulos has become is just, it's stark.
Singer travels there. His narrow face is pale. His hands are described as talking desperately in sign language. But Antonopoulos has just changed.
He's drowsy, almost perpetually immobile. And he's nearly unresponsive to Singer's frantic attempts at signing. It's gone.
And the few things Antonopoulos does do are so unsettling, almost grotesque.
The tricks.
He does these bizarre sensory-focused things like plunging his hand into boiling sugar syrup before quickly dunking it into cold water, rolling his eyes like he's in agony.
And he does this mostly for the other mutes in the asylum.
It's such a painful symbol. The friend who was once his companion has regressed into this strange, sensory-driven performance artist for a very specialized audience.
Yeah, and the source material elevates this. It makes it almost mythical. It describes Antonopoulos sitting motionless in his bright garments, resembling a wise king from a legend in his stillness.
So the real reciprocal communication is absolutely gone.
Completely. Singer's partner has become an icon, a deity maybe, or this unknowable symbol of peace. But he's definitely not a man he can talk to anymore.
But let's question Singer's behavior here for a second. If he's so proficient in communication, why does he just let Antonopoulos regress like that? Why doesn't he force a real connection?
That is the core of his tragedy, I think. Singer is so desperate to maintain the idea of Antonopoulos that he just cannot confront the reality of the loss.
If he admitted his friend was truly gone, mentally,
his own identity would just dissolve. So he retreats into this private ritual, which is where the unmailed letters come in.
Yes, the unmailed communication. These are the lengthy, detailed letters he writes to Antonopoulos, shaping the words with the same meticulous care he uses when he's engraving silver. It's his only real emotional outlet.
His only emotional lifeline. But he knows they're useless. He never mails them.
Right.
He sends weekly comic strips and monthly money orders instead. Just these purely superficial, expected gestures of, maintenance.
And he engages in these elaborate, almost frantic rationalizations. He tries to convince himself that, well, maybe Antonopoulos secretly can read, or maybe someone at the asylum can read them aloud to him.
But the letters just accumulate, and then he destroys them.
It's cycle-right, rationalized, destroy. It just shows his deep need to keep their old bond going, even though he knows, intellectually, he's just speaking into a void.
Precisely. And this profound emotional vacancy is what transforms him into the silent mirror for the whole town.
After Antonopoulos leaves, Singer moves into a new boarding house room, and suddenly his space becomes a hub.
A hub, yeah. He becomes the silent center for 4 unique, intensely verbal individuals, all seeking validation and understanding. His room has visitors more often than any other boarder in the house.
And they're drawn to his silence because they believe he alone hears them. Or, even better, that he understands their singular, desperate purpose without all the interference of human judgment.
Exactly.
So now we get into the heart of this deep dive, the 4 people who are orbiting Singer. And they really represent the fractured soul of the impoverished American South. The artist, the revolutionary, the justice seeker, and the observer.
A perfect summary.
Let's start with Biff Brannon, the cafe owner. He seems, the most outwardly stable, but internally, he's just this fascinating well of contradiction and introspection.
Biff is defined by his intense but detached curiosity. He runs a New York cafe, and it's basically his observation post. He notices the important things that go on in the town, the subtle shifts in character, the economic pressures, the unspoken loneliness, and his personal life is just as complex.
His relationship with his wife, Alice.
It was so strangely formal. He called her Mrs. and she called him Mr. Brannon. It was a habit they had picked up years ago during a fight and just never dropped.
Wow. And Biff has this unique appreciation for difference. He states it plainly, I like freaks.
He does. And when Alice dies, his reaction isn't traditional grief. It's this immediate, almost obsessive need to restructure his personal space and really his identity.
He starts cleaning house, mentally and physically.
Right. He clears out their once tacky and flossy bedroom, gets rid of the flaked and rusty iron bed, and replaces it with a simple studio couch. It's like he's closing a chapter.
But he keeps two specific, very evocative items. His mother's old bone hairpin and Alice's Agua Florida perfume.
Let's pause on the perfume, because this is where the sensory detail in the sources is just so compelling.
Biff, standing shirtless in front of the mirror, dabs the scent on his wrists and, surprisingly, on his dark, hairy armpits.
And that scent, the Agua Florida, which was this cheap, potent floral cologne that was popular at the time, it just stuns him. It instantly brings back memories that gather together the whole long span of their years.
He notes that their past life becomes whole as only the past can be whole.
Right, and he's mixing the physical smell of memory tied to his wife with the present reality of his own body and the memory of his mother's hairpin.
And this act of mixing scents and memories connects directly to his internal philosophy on identity and gender, which he thinks about when he's reflecting on old age.
Exactly. He believes all people are naturally of both sexes. He observes how aging seems to mix these attributes. Old men grow high-voiced and sometimes take on a mincing walk, while old women often grow fat, deep-voiced, and develop dark little mustaches.
He is looking for balance and fluidity in human nature. He's acknowledging that these rigid boundaries we have are artificial.
And this hidden nurturing side comes out when he admits that part of him wishes he were a mother to Mick and his niece, Baby. He's a man who contains multitudes, and his public persona as this laconic cafe owner just hides all this profound introspection.
And he documents it all in his secret notebook, a common public school tablet.
And this notebook, it functions as his private ledger of the world. He meticulously records accounts, checks for beers, crosses for dinners, straight lines for whiskey, but also his private, almost mystical drawings.
The drawings are fascinating. They're these small, round, seated cats with human and female faces that strongly resemble Alice.
It's a way of simplifying, right, of stabilizing the chaos of life and relationships. He reduces his complicated wife and all his conflicting emotions into the stable, observing, feline form.
And this need for stability leads him directly to Singer.
It does. Biff finds the mute downright uncanny. He's obsessed with what Singer knows, constantly wondering about the mutes in her life and feeling uneasy about his non-human nature.
Singer's silence allows Biff to project this kind of transcendental knowledge onto him. Knowledge Biff himself can't get through just observation or liquor.
He hopes Singer holds the key to the ultimate pattern of humanity.
So Biff is the seeker who relies on silent observation to understand the world, and he's desperately hoping Singer is the key to unlocking that universal human pattern. Okay, let's pivot sharply to Jake Blount, who embodies the exact opposite approach.
Oh, yeah.
Chaotic, loud, and constantly externalizing his search for meaning.
Moving from the meticulous silence of Biff's cafe to Jake Blount is like walking into a storm. It really is. Jake is constantly talking, a cataract of words just pouring from his throat.
He's a man of shifting identities, unstable class presentation.
His accent changes constantly. Sometimes he sounds like a linthead and sometimes like a professor. And for those who might not know the regional jargon, linthead is a derogatory term for a textile mill worker.
So that accent shift is central to his identity. He's trying to transcend the class he despises, the mill workers, while at the same time trying to advocate for them.
He drinks heavily, but the liquor never seems to drag him down. It just amplifies his chaotic energy. And his entire worldview is structured around this central, vast conspiracy.
The division between the few who know the truth and the millions who don't.
Kept ignorant by what he calls a vast and insidious conspiracy of obscurantism.
And this belief system is absolutely necessary for Jake's psychological survival, isn't it?
Oh, completely. It allows him to intellectualize his profound political failures and his personal chaos. If the masses are ignorant because of a conspiracy, then his inability to mobilize them isn't his fault. It's some external vast obstacle.
His anti-capitalism is focused directly on the mill economy. He rails against it as a form of serfdom, paying these low $10 to $11 weekly wages and forcing workers to use company-owned stores that overcharge them for everything.
He tried to put these beliefs into action with his organization, which he called Action. His ultimate goal was the raising of capitalism through violent riots. He wrote the whole Constitution himself, but the attempt just failed spectacularly.
He left for 3 months to recruit, totally confident in his mission, only to come back and find the organization had completely dissolved.
Which just proved how hard it is to organize the Deep South poor, the very people he claims to be fighting for, and it highlights his own erratic, ineffective leadership style.
Which brings us to the profound irony of his current job.
Oh, yeah. He works at the gaudy, sunny Dixie Show, running the Flying Ginny, which is another name for a merry-go-round, for $12 a week.
A revolutionary working as a carnival ride operator.
Spinning the oppressed in circles. He sees the whole show with its static wooden horses and relentless mechanical music as a grotesque, drunken liquor dream. And his job is managing the very crowds, mostly mill workers and Negroes, who are trapped in the system he's raging against.
And this internal contradiction, this terrifying gap between his grand mission and his feudal reality, it manifests in his recurring, vivid nightmare.
This dream is crucial. He dreams of walking silently among a great, starving, half-naked crowd. He's carrying this huge covered basket, which symbolizes his mission and the terrible weight of his theoretical knowledge. But he can never find the exact place to set it down.
It represents the terror of his political mission having no outlet, no endpoint. He's trapped, silenced, even though he's constantly talking.
And his zeal constantly brings him into conflict, particularly with Dr. Copeland. Jake tries to find common ground with him, the shared oppression, but their methods just clash immediately.
Jake dismisses organized, peaceful protest as childish and balls. He's only arguing for chaotic, sudden action.
Right. And meanwhile, Dr. Copeland finds Jake's method of teaching the don't-knows with a theoretical, radical chain-letter instruction sheet to be absolutely ridiculous.
They're both revolutionaries, but they can't agree on the means, the timing, or even the true nature of the oppressed class.
And their need to claim Singer for their own ideological camps is a perfect example of projection. They argue intensely over Singer's race.
Jake insists he must be Irish Anglo-Saxon to fit his narrative of the oppressed European immigrant worker.
While Dr. Copeland is absolutely certain Singer is Jewish.
And he bases that on his eyes.
He does. He claims they hold the knowledge of one who belongs to a race that is oppressed. And this fight over ethnicity just highlights that Singer is a blank slate. Each man must fit him into his existing framework of class and oppression to justify his own purpose and the direction of his fight.
Shifting now, we turn to Dr. Benedict Mady Copeland, a man who, unlike Jake, does not suffer from a lack of focus. He is defined entirely by his strong, true purpose to teach and guide his people toward justice.
Dr. Copeland is an intellectual giant in a town that just ignores intellectualism. He's steeped in philosophy, reading Spinoza, and crucially, Karl Marx. He is operating so far outside the norms of this segregated Deep South town, not just as a doctor, but as a revolutionary intellectual.
Let's touch on the impact of his reading for a moment. Spinoza's deterministic philosophy, the idea that everything is part of a necessary chain of cause and effect, driven by impersonal laws, that contrasts so sharply with Marx's call for agency and class struggle and revolution.
And that tension is mirrored perfectly in Copeland's own life. He tries to exert this radical agency while constantly being crushed by the deterministic reality of Southern racism and poverty.
His ideology is staunchly Marxist. He believes the poor, regardless of color, are the oppressed class.
He advocates passionately for communal ownership of natural resources, land, sunlight, rain, which in the context of the South means breaking down the whole plantation and mill system that holds people captive.
And he rejects the idea that service is slavery as long as the labor is socially necessary. He rails instead against what he calls wasted labor jobs, like tending private flower gardens or polishing floors in wealthy houses.
Tasks that serve no real communal use and only reinforce class division. And he's constantly distributing birth control devices from his own pocket to his patients, showing his commitment to practical upliftment and, planned progress.
But his intellectual rigidity clashes so tragically with his own family.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. He viewed his children as assets in his mission. He tried to force them into these specific utilitarian roles. Hamilton, a scientist, Karl Marx, a teacher, William, a lawyer, and Portia, a doctor. He even dressed them in dark, plain clothes to signify their serious, real, true purpose.
Which just created this immense chasm between them. His daughter, Portia, who still sits with him, she challenges him directly. She tells him that he talks only from his brain, whereas they, his children, talk from their hearts.
His revolutionary ideals just could not translate into domestic love or understanding.
And this emotional failure, it all culminates in the William crisis.
Yes. His son Willie, who was supposed to be the lawyer for the oppressed, gets into a violent razor fight over a woman named Love Jones, and he's jailed. And Dr. Copeland sees this as the ultimate injustice. Willie, trapped in the very system he was supposed to be fighting against.
And he's already suffering from debilitating tuberculosis and fever when he attempts to see the superior court judge. This is the moment his intellectual theory collides with savage physical reality.
The deputy sheriff mocks him, strikes him, and he's thrown into a filthy, icy cell with other sick men. And the source describes his internal reaction during the beating in these powerful, almost sublime terms.
His rage during the beating transforms into a glorious strength.
Making him laugh and sob at the same time. This is the moment his mission is baptized in personal humiliation. The theory is just shattered by the concrete violence of oppression.
But despite the physical and mental toll, his purpose just drives him relentlessly. We see this in the essay contest he presides over, about how to better the position of the Negro race.
And he selects Lancey Davis's paper, which is a truly radical document. Lancey advocates for a violent revolution, urging the formation of a secret organization of colored leaders and scholars, whose goal would be to take all territory east of the Mississippi River.
And the doctor can't even bring himself to read the essay aloud to the crowd. It's maybe too inflammatory, too dangerous to say out loud.
But he awards the $5 prize. He validates this extreme, desperate need for justice through violence.
And even as his body is failing him, his mind is racing for solutions. His final desperate plan is to lead more than 1,000 Negroes in this county in a massive march on Washington, D.C.
An idealistic but logistically impossible goal given his condition and the local reality. And when Jake Blount violently dismisses this plan as irrelevant, Copeland's isolation is complete. He has his purpose, but no one to truly share the burden of implementation with, except, perhaps, the silent singer.
The political turmoil and psychological pressure that define Jake and Copeland. It contrasts so sharply with our final seeker, Mick Kelly, who is battling the same poverty, but her struggle manifests as a crushing of artistic ambition.
Mick is the raw nerve of the narrative. She really is. She's defined by this constant internal music, which is always there, going on in the back of her mind, no matter what chaotic situation she's dealing with.
She lives in a world defined by the intense pressure of her aesthetic idealism clashing with just brutal economic reality.
And her ambition is fierce. She works hard to learn piano chords, paying for lessons by making a massive sacrifice in a poor household, skipping lunch, which was 50 cents a week.
Her ultimate dream is magnificent and dramatic. She wants to be a famous composer, conducting a symphony in a rhinestone-spangled dress with MK printed prominently on the curtains.
But her creative drive is constantly undermined by reality. Every attempt at creation turns into humiliation. She spends weeks painstakingly building a violin, fueled by her internal sounds, only for it to turn out as a cross between a mandolin and a ukulele.
Useless and humiliating.
It sounds like poverty itself. Cheap parts, desperate effort, and ultimate failure.
And the social world is no kinder to her. Her carefully planned high school party fails miserably. She tries to impose order-red crepe paper, autumn leaves, but it's overrun by uninvited, younger neighborhood kids who ruin everything.
She's too tall. No one will prom with her except Harry Minimitz, and that's out of pity. It's a microcosmic failure of her ability to conduct the outside world the way she conducts her internal music.
The fallout from that party leads to her most profound, almost spiritual internal moment.
Yes, she's listening to music, and the opening is so transcendent she feels it's like God strutting in the night. But then the music shifts, and it becomes intensely personal. This music was her, the real plain her.
And the inability to capture that sound, that essence of herself, drives her to self-destructive fury.
She experiences this aesthetic frustration as physical pain. She slams her fists into her leg until the tears come, and then she scrapes her hand bloody with sharp rocks. The source material shows us that the inability to express her soul through music leads directly to self-harm.
She is also grappling with profound family stress, tied directly to their poverty. Her father, crippled from an accident and increasingly lonely, struggles to advertise his failing watch repair business.
He plasters signs everywhere saying, very cheap and expert, but customers are scarce. Mick sees him cleaning old springs just to seem busy, and she realizes how desperate and lonely he is.
And then the event that just irrevocably shatters their world, the Baby Wilson tragedy.
Her 7-year-old brother, George, the sources often call him Bubber. He accidentally shoots his younger cousin, Baby Wilson, in the head with a loaded rifle, fracturing her skull.
It's pure devastating accident born of desperation and lack of supervision.
And Mick, panicked and desperate to manage the catastrophe, tells George this horrible, terrible lie that they are searching for him to send him to Sing Sing for the electric chair. She says they have electric chairs just his size.
Oh, that's brutal.
It is. George runs away, traumatized, and the neighborhood kids forever brand him Baby Killer Kelly. The trauma is deep and societal.
And the financial cost is ruinous because of the massive debt from Baby Wilson's private nurse and hospital fees. Mrs. Wilson insists on a private room, rejecting the children's ward. The family is financially destroyed. They lose the house.
This financial reality forces Mick's ultimate and most brutal compromise. The economic reality crushes the ethereal world of music. She quits school and takes a job at Woolworth's selling costume jewelry.
And she's miserable, she's physically exhausted, forced to maintain the store's toxic motto, keep on your toes and smile, while internally, her musical dreams are just fading away.
The idea of her great New York symphony recedes into this hazy foreign land. That mandated smile is the physical manifestation of the crushing of her soul, the artist forced to pretend for the sake of the debt.
And Singer, of course, is the only person she can talk to about these grand dreams. His silence is the only space where her rhinestoned, triumphant MK symphony is safe from the harsh realities of factory town debt.
It really is.
It's fascinating how all four of these intense characters, Biff, Jake, Copeland, and Mick, are all revolving around Singer, yet their paths never truly merge. There must be a moment where their worlds collide, and the sources give us that moment. It's just incredibly anticlimactic.
It is the ultimate failure of community. We witness this brief, highly awkward moment when all four seekers visit Singer's room at the same time.
They just stand there stiffly, talking about the weather or the low factory payroll, waiting desperately for each other to leave. They never truly engage with one another's passionate, desperate causes.
They stand there like they are from different cities, united only by their need for the silent audience in the middle of the room. Their commonality, their attraction to Singer, it doesn't translate into actual connection or community.
They're talking at Singer, but completely ignoring the other person who is equally desperate for a purpose.
And Singer, who's supposed to be the great spiritual receptacle, he is completely bewildered by this interaction. He records the event in an unmailed letter to Antonopoulos, and it offers this key insight into his perspective.
What does he say?
He states flatly that he does not understand them. He notes they are rude and always concerned with something they hate and something they love. Singer misses the entire point of their shared desperation because he is focused entirely on his own internal loss.
His world is shrinking back down to just Antonopoulos.
Yeah.
And he needs one last confirmation of their fractured bond.
His final, devastating trip to the asylum confirmed that definitive loss. His friend was truly gone, sitting motionless, resembling a legend, completely unreachable.
With the loss of his soul, true recipient of affection, the mirror that was John Singer just shatters.
He realizes he is as isolated as the people who come to him. And Singer commits suicide using a pistol, ensuring his silence becomes permanent.
The immediate aftermath, the funeral, is chaotic. It perfectly mirrors the disordered lives of the four seekers.
Mick is hysterical, choking with grief. Jake stands scowling down at the grave with his fist to his mouth, just embodying this silent rage and frustration.
And Dr. Copeland, still obsessed with his failed mission, stands on the edge of the crowd, moaning to himself about his son, Willie.
Singer's affairs are predictably messy. The beneficiary on his life insurance is his deceased friend Antonopoulos, and there's barely enough money for the burial.
So it's Biff Brannon, the stable observer, who is left to handle the messy practical affairs, the logistics of a life that was supposed to be profoundly meaningful.
And it is Biff who experiences the final, powerful psychological moment, alone in his cafe, forced to process this chaos and the crushing failure of the profit he had invested so much in.
This is the moment of total insight and then immediate retraction.
Yes. Biff is suspended between two worlds. He sees this momentary flash of radiance of illumination. In this flash, his soul expands, and he understands human struggle and of valor, and the endless fluid passage of humanity. He sees the cosmic pattern, a sense of universal love and acceptance that transcends their miserable little town.
But that illumination, that moment of understanding, is instantly replaced by a sharp, brutal shaft of terror.
He sees his own face reflected in the counterglass, a contorted, frightened face. One eye is fixed narrowly on the past, dwelling on the details of Alice and the dead, and the other is gazing wide and affrighted into a future of blackness, error, and ruin.
He is left suspended forever between bitter irony and faith, unable to reconcile the sudden, brief beauty of truth with the terrifying reality of disorder and inevitable death.
This heavy moment.
Why Biff? Why is he the one left with this terrifying cosmic truth?
I think it's because he's the meticulous observer. He stands slightly outside the action, behind the counter, watching the patterns. He's the only one who didn't project a specific mission like justice or revolution or art onto Singer.
He projected a desire for understanding.
Exactly. And in that brief moment after Singer's death, he is given that understanding. But it is too vast, too terrifyingly beautiful and chaotic to live with. He has to force himself back to being reasonable, retreating from total insight just to function.
So if we look at the final summary of the characters' fates, we see that the silence of Singer didn't save them or guide them. It just delayed their confrontation with reality.
Right.
Singer's death forces them all back into their own fractured, isolated worlds.
Exactly. They scatter, forced to confront the failure of their misplaced faith. Dr. Copeland, suffering from his illness and his failed mission, is forced to retire to a family farm where his grand ideas of justice just fall on the deaf ears of his kin.
They only want advice on their mule's sore foot.
A final, cruel irony. His revolution is reduced to veterinary advice.
And Mick is stuck working at Woolworth's, maintaining that crushing mandated smile. Her dreams of being MK, the famous composer, are now utterly crushed by the weight of hospital debt, the cost of poverty exacting its toll on her artistic soul.
And Jake is last seen leaving town, still looking for the place to set down his burden, forever searching for a collective action that can never materialize. He's perhaps doomed to wander and talk without ever truly finding a receptive audience or a functional platform.
So the deep dive takeaway here is stark. The profound central tragedy is that the silence of Singer allowed each person to project their deepest, most desperate internal need, be it love, justice, music, or revolution, onto him.
He was a perfect mirror because he gave no answers back.
But their true loneliness wasn't cured by finding a receptive, silent ear. It was compounded by their fundamental inability to communicate these essential defining needs to each other.
That's it. They could talk at Singer, the symbol, but they couldn't talk with the people standing right next to them, the people who shared their poverty, their rage, and their artistic frustration.
Singer wasn't a prophet. He was an emotional mirror reflecting their own desperate, fragmented selves back to them.
And his suicide wasn't just his personal tragedy. It was the final, devastating proof that the object of their devotion was just as broken, human, and desperately lonely as they were.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. We often seek external figures, symbols, or even silent platforms to carry our deepest burdens and desires, hoping they'll validate our purpose.
But if we rely solely on external projections, what happens when our chosen prophet, or silent confidant, turns out to be just as broken and human as we are? Are you searching for a mirror today, or are you brave enough to seek connection with the messy, imperfect, and intensely verbal people right beside you?